When my wife handed me divorce papers, I thought I knew exactly why our marriage was failing. But the truth was far more twisted than I could have imagined. The motel receptionist's words changed my perspective, but what I discovered about my family nearly broke me. My name is Dalton Ridgway. I'm 42 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I owned a successful flooring installation company in suburban Ohio, specializing in hardwood and laminate. My wife Rebecca and I have been married for 12 years. We had 2 beautiful kids, Amelia, our 10-year-old daughter we adopted when we thought we couldn't have children of our own, and Mateo, our 8-year-old son who came as a miracle baby just 2 years later. The irony wasn't lost on me that I spent my days making other people's houses look perfect, while my own home was slowly falling apart underneath my feet. It started with small things. Rebecca began working late more often at her job as a medical office coordinator. She'd come home tired, distracted, always checking her phone. When I asked about her day, she'd give me one-word answers and disappear into the bedroom. I chalked it up to stress from her demanding boss, Dr. Patterson. Then came the girls' nights out. Every Friday, like clockwork, Rebecca would dress up, and I mean really dress up, in ways she hadn't for me in months. Tight dresses, high heels, makeup done to perfection. When I commented on how beautiful she looked, she'd barely acknowledge me. "I'm just trying to feel good about myself, Dalton," Rebecca would say, adjusting her earrings in the hallway mirror. "Is that a crime?" The kids started noticing too. Amelia, being older and more perceptive, would watch her mother get ready with this confused expression on her face. "Why does Mom get so dressed up just to see Aunt Sandra?" Amelia asked me one Friday evening while we watched a movie together. I didn't have an answer that made sense, even to myself. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night in March. I'd had a long day installing Brazilian cherry floors in a mansion across town. My back was killing me, and all I wanted was a quiet dinner with my family. But when I walked through the front door, the house felt different. Cold, empty, despite everyone being home. Rebecca was sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers in front of her. Amelia and Mateo were unusually quiet, picking at their microwave dinners. The air felt thick with tension, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. "We need to talk," Rebecca said without looking up from her papers. Those 4 words every married man dreads hearing. I set down my tool bag and washed my hands at the kitchen sink, buying myself a few seconds to prepare for whatever was coming. "Kids, go finish your homework upstairs," I said, keeping my voice steady. Amelia grabbed Mateo's hand and led him away, but not before shooting me a worried glance that broke my heart. At 10 years old, she was already trying to protect her little brother from whatever storm was about to hit our family. Rebecca didn't look up when I sat down across from her at her kitchen table. The papers spread out in front of her looked official, serious. My stomach dropped before I even knew what they were. "What's all this about?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "Divorce papers," Rebecca said, her voice flat and emotionless. "I've already spoken to an attorney. We can do this the easy way or the hard way, but either way, it's happening." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I stared at her, searching for any trace of the woman I'd fallen in love with 12 years ago. But she was gone, replaced by this cold stranger who couldn't even look me in the eye. "Rebecca, what are you talking about?" I said, my voice barely steady. "Where is this coming from? We can work through whatever's wrong." She finally looked up, and what I saw in her eyes nearly broke me. Not anger, not sadness, just nothing, like I was already dead to her. "There's nothing to work through, Dalton," Rebecca replied. "This marriage has been over for months. I'm just making it official." I reached for the papers, but she pulled them back. "I want the house," she continued, like she was reading from script. "The kids will stay with me. You can have visitation rights, of course, but they need stability." Stability. The word came out harsher than I intended. I've been nothing but stable for this family. I work 6 days a week to keep this roof over our heads, to pay for Amelia's piano lessons and Mateo's soccer cleats. Working yourself to death in dusty crawl spaces isn't the same as being present, Dalton, Rebecca shot back. "When's the last time you really talked to your children? When's the last time you asked me about my day and actually listened to the answer?" That stung because there was truth in it. The flooring business was demanding, especially during busy seasons. But I thought I was doing the right thing, providing for my family. "So this is it?" I asked. 12 years of marriage, and you're just done?" I'm done pretending, Rebecca said, gathering the papers. I'm done living a life that feels like I'm slowly suffocating. She stood up and walked toward the stairs, then paused. My mother is coming to help with the transition, she added. She'll be here tomorrow. Millicent Harwick. Rebecca's mother had never liked me. Always thought her daughter could do better than a blue-collar guy who worked with his hands. Now she'd get her chance to prove it. After Rebecca disappeared upstairs, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at the spot where those papers had been. Upstairs, I could hear Amelia trying to comfort Mateo, who was crying softly. My 10-year-old daughter was already stepping into a role no child should have to fill. I walked to the window and looked out at the yard where Mateo and I had built a treehouse last summer, where Amelia had learned to ride her bike, where we'd had family barbecues with my brother Quentin, who always brought too much beer and terrible jokes that made the kids laugh. How had I missed the signs that my world was falling apart? The next morning, I called my brother Quentin. He'd always been my closest friend, the one person I could count on when life got complicated. If anyone could help me make sense of this mess, it would be him. Hey, Dal, Quentin said when he picked up. His voice sounded strained, different somehow. Rebecca wants a divorce, I said without preamble. She served me papers last night. Silence on the other end. Too long of silence. Quentin, you there? Yeah, I'm here, he replied, but something in his tone made my stomach twist. I'm sorry to hear that, brother. Can you come over? I need someone to talk to, and the kids are asking questions I don't know how to answer. Another pause. I don't think that's a good idea right now, Dal. What do you mean it's not a good idea? I asked, confusion turning to suspicion. Since when do you not have time for family? It's complicated, Quentin said, and I could hear him moving around, probably pacing like he did when he was nervous. Complicated how? I pressed. The silence stretched until I thought the call had dropped. Then Quentin spoke, and his words hit me like a physical blow. I can't be around Rebecca right now, okay? It wouldn't be right. My blood turned to ice. What the hell does that mean, Quentin? Dalton, listen. No, you listen. I interrupted, my voice getting louder. Are you telling me you have feelings for my wife? It's not like that, he said quickly, but his defensive tone told me everything I needed to know. How long? I demanded. How long have you been carrying a torch for Rebecca? Since before you married her, Quentin admitted, his voice barely a whisper. But I never acted on it, Dal. I swear to you, I never crossed that line. But you knew, I said, pieces falling into place. You knew she was unhappy, you knew she was planning to leave, and you said nothing. What was I supposed to do? Quentin shot back. Betray her confidence? She needed someone to talk to. She needed someone to talk to. I repeated, incredulous. She's my wife, Quentin. Was my wife. You should have told me. I couldn't, he said. She trusted me. I hung up without another word. My own brother had chosen Rebecca's secrets over his loyalty to me. The betrayal cut deeper than even the divorce papers had. Standing in my empty kitchen, I realized I was truly alone. My wife was leaving me. My brother had been harboring feelings for her for years, and my children were upstairs trying to make sense of a world that had suddenly stopped making sense. I walked to the garage where my tools were stored. Working with my hands had always helped me think clearly. Maybe if I stayed busy, I could figure out how to put my life back together. Millicent Harwick arrived at noon the next day in her pristine white Cadillac, stepping out like she owned the place. She'd never liked me from the moment Rebecca brought me home, and now she smelled blood in the water. Dalton, she said with a curt nod, adjusting her designer purse on her shoulder. I suppose you know why I'm here. To help my wife destroy our family. I replied, keeping my voice level despite the anger boiling inside me. To help my daughter reclaim her life. Millicent corrected, walking past me into the house like she lived there. Rebecca has been unhappy for years. It's about time she did something about it. Amelia and Mateo were sitting on the living room couch, watching their grandmother with wide eyes. They'd always been a little intimidated by Millicent's stern demeanor and sharp tone. Grandma Millie, Mateo said, running to hug her. For a brief moment, Millicent's expression softened as she embraced her grandson. But when she looked back at me over his head, the ice returned to her eyes. Children, why don't you go play outside while the adults talk, she suggested. After they left, Rebecca came downstairs. She'd been avoiding me since dropping her bombshell, but now with her mother here for backup, she seemed more confident. Have you had a chance to look over the papers? Rebecca asked. I've looked at them. I said. But I'm not signing anything until I talk to my own lawyer. That's your right, Millicent interjected. But dragging this out will only make things harder on everyone, especially the children. The children are my main concern, I said firmly. They didn't ask for this. No, they didn't, Millicent agreed. Which is why they deserve a stable home environment with their mother, not a father who's never around because he's crawling under houses all day. That was the last straw. I'd taken enough shots at my character and my profession. Those houses I crawl under pay for everything in this home, I said, standing up to my full height. Every meal your daughter eats, every piece of clothing she wears, every vacation this family has taken, it all came from my work. Money isn't everything, Dalton, Rebecca said quietly. You're right, I replied, looking directly at her. Loyalty is. Honesty is. Commitment is. Things I thought we shared until yesterday. Millicent stepped between us. There's no need for hostility. Rebecca has made her decision, and you need to respect that. I'll respect it, I said, but I won't make it easy. If she wants to fight over the kids, she'll get one. The look that passed between Rebecca and her mother told me they'd expected me to roll over and accept whatever terms they offered. They were about to learn that this blue-collar guy had more fight in him than they'd anticipated. The day after my divorce was finalized, I found myself loading what little I owned into my pickup truck. Rebecca had gotten the house, just like she wanted. My lawyer had fought for joint custody, but the judge awarded her primary custody with me, getting weekends and holidays. At least I'd won the right to keep Amelia and Mateo overnight during my visitation. Dad, where are we going? Mateo asked, climbing into the passenger seat with his small backpack. Amelia sat in the back, looking older than her 10 years. We're going to stay somewhere temporary, I said, try to keep my voice steady. Just for a few nights until I find us a proper place. The truth was, I couldn't afford an apartment big enough for 3 people, not with the child support payments and the legal fees. Rebecca's lawyer had made sure to squeeze every penny out of me. The cheap motel on Route 9 was all I could manage right now. The Sleepy Inn wasn't much to look at, faded blue paint, a flickering neon sign, and a parking lot that had seen better days. But it was clean, and it had 2 beds, which was all we needed. The receptionist was a woman in her early 30s with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. She looked at me standing there with 2 confused children and didn't ask questions she didn't need answers to. Rough day, she asked softly while processing my credit card. Finalize my divorce today, I said, keeping my voice low so the kids couldn't hear. Need a place for me and my children for a few nights. She nodded with understanding and slid the room key across the counter. Then she looked directly at me and said something that cut right through all the pain and confusion. Some endings aren't failures, she said quietly. Sometimes they're just the beginning of something honest. Her words hit me harder than I expected. For months, I've been beating myself up, wondering what I could have done differently, how I could have saved my marriage. But maybe she was right. Maybe this wasn't about failure at all. Thank you, I said, meaning it more than she could know. Room 127, she replied. Continental breakfast starts at 6 if your little ones are early risers. That night, lying in the motel bed with Mateo curled up beside me and Amelia in the bed next to us, I stared at the ceiling and thought about the receptionist's words. Amelia had cried herself to sleep, asking why Mommy didn't want us to live together anymore. Mateo kept asking when we were going home. I didn't have good answers for either of them, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let this break us. We might not have our house anymore, and our family might look different now, but we were still a family. I was still their father, and nothing Rebecca or her lawyers could do would change that. The next morning at the Continental breakfast area, Amelia sat across from me picking at her cereal, while Mateo scarfed down chocolate chip muffins like he hadn't eaten in days. Dad, Amelia said quietly, are you and Mom getting back together? The question I've been dreading. Kids always hope their parents will reconcile, even when the situation is beyond repair. No, sweetheart, I said gently. Mom and I are going to live in different places now, but that doesn't change how much we both love you and Mateo. But why? She pressed, her eyes filling with tears. What did we do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong, I said firmly, reaching across the table to take her small hand. Sometimes adults have problems that can't be fixed, but it has nothing to do with you kids. Is it because I didn't clean my room enough? Mateo asked, muffin crumbs on his chin. No, buddy, I said, my heart breaking. You're the best kids any dad could ask for. What I couldn't tell them was that I was starting to suspect there were bigger problems than just an unhappy marriage. Rebecca's behavior over the past year, the secretive phone calls, the way she'd been so eager to push through the divorce, it all pointed to something more than just wanting out of our marriage. Are we going to be poor now? Amelia asked, looking around the modest motel breakfast area. We're going to be fine, I assured her, though I wasn't entirely sure how. Dad's business is doing well, and I'm going to find us a nice apartment where you can have your own rooms. After breakfast, I called my foreman, Jake, to check on the jobs we had scheduled for the week. I've been distracted lately, and I couldn't afford to lose customers on top of everything else. Dal, you sound rough, Jake said. Why don't you take a few days? Me and the crew can handle the Henderson job. I need to work, Jake, I replied. I can't afford to take time off right now. But even as I said it, I knew he was right. I was in no condition to be installing hardwood floors or operating power tools. My mind was scattered, and that was dangerous in my line of work. The receptionist from the night before, whose name tag read Willa, approached our table with a fresh pot of coffee. How are you folks doing this morning? She asked. We're okay, I said, accepting the refill gratefully. Dad lost his house, Mateo announced matter-of-factly, causing me to wince. That must be tough, Willa said sympathetically, not missing a beat. But sometimes new adventures start with losing something old. I looked at her more carefully. There was wisdom in her eyes that seemed older than her years, like she'd been through her own share of difficult times. 3 weeks into our new life at the apartment I'd finally managed to rent, I got a call that changed everything. Dr. Peterson, our family physician, needed to see me urgently about some routine blood work that had been done during Mateo's last physical. Mr. Ridgway, Dr. Peterson said when I arrived at his office, I need to discuss some unexpected results from your son's blood tests. My stomach dropped. Is Mateo sick? What's wrong with him? Mateo is perfectly healthy, the doctor assured me quickly. But the blood typing we did as part of his sports physical has raised some questions about paternity. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. What are you saying? Based on the blood types, it's genetically impossible for you to be Mateo's biological father, Dr. Peterson said gently. I'm sorry to have to tell you this way. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process what he just told me. Mateo, my miracle baby, the son who'd completed our family after we'd adopted Amelia, wasn't mine. 8 years of being his father, and it was all built on a lie. Are you certain? I asked, though I knew doctors didn't make mistakes about something like this. I'm afraid so, he replied. I felt obligated to inform you, given the circumstances. I drove to Rebecca's house in a fog of rage and betrayal. She was in the front yard with Millicent, discussing something about the garden when I pulled into the driveway. We need to talk, I said, my voice deadly calm. Now. Rebecca took one look at my face and knew exactly why I was there. Dalton, let me explain. Explain what? I interrupted. Explain how you've been lying to me for 8 years. Explain how my son isn't actually my son. Millicent stepped forward protectively. Lower your voice, Dalton. The neighbors don't need to hear this. I don't give a damn about the neighbors, I said, my composure finally breaking. Your daughter has been passing off another man's child as mine, and you want me to worry about what people think. Who is he, Rebecca? I demanded. Who is Mateo's real father? Rebecca's face went pale, but she didn't answer. It doesn't matter now, Millicent said coldly. Mateo knows you as his father. That's what matters. It matters to me. I shot back. I have a right to know who I've been supporting, who I've been loving as my own child. You have no rights, Millicent said with venom. My daughter owes you nothing. Your daughter owes me the truth, I said, stepping closer. 8 years of truth that she stole from me. Rebecca finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. It was someone from work. It doesn't matter who. But it did matter. Everything mattered now. My entire life had been built on lies, and I was determined to uncover every single one of them, no matter how much it hurt. Despite the betrayal, despite the lies, I knew one thing for certain. Mateo was still my son in every way that truly mattered. Biology didn't change. 8 years of bedtime stories, scraped knees, and father-son moments. I'd fight for him just as hard as I'd fight for Amelia. 2 days after learning the truth about Mateo's paternity, I got a call from Amelia's school. Mrs. Henderson, her teacher, needed to see me immediately about some behavioral issues. Mr. Ridgway, Mrs. Henderson said when I arrived at Lincoln Elementary, Amelia got into a fight today with another student. This is very unlike her. My heart sank. Amelia had always been the perfect student, quiet, well-behaved, eager to please. The divorce was already taking its toll on my children. What happened? I asked. Another girl made some comments about divorce, and Amelia became very upset. She pushed the girl and called her some inappropriate names. We had to separate them. When Amelia came into the principal's office, her eyes were red from crying, and there was a defiance set to her jaw that reminded me of myself. Amelia, I said gently, can you tell me what happened? Sarah Morrison said that kids whose parents get divorced are broken. Amelia said, her voice shaking with anger. She said we're not a real family anymore because you don't live with us. My chest tightened with pain. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of, that the adult problems would spill over and hurt my children. And what did you say to Sarah? I asked. I told her she was stupid and that our family is still real even if it looks different now, Amelia said. Then she said that divorced dads usually don't stick around, and that's when I pushed her. I looked at Mrs. Henderson. What consequences are we looking at? Normally, we'd have a one-day suspension for physical altercation, she said. But given the circumstances, we're willing to consider counseling instead. Yes, I said immediately. Whatever she needs. After we left the school, I took Amelia to get ice cream, something we used to do together before everything fell apart. Dad, she said while licking her chocolate cone, are you going to stop being our dad now that you know about Mateo? The question hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean, sweetheart? I heard you and Mom fighting about blood tests, she said quietly. I know Mateo isn't really your son. I stopped walking and knelt down in front of her, taking her small hands in mine. Listen to me very carefully, Amelia, I said. Mateo is my son, and you're my daughter. Not because of blood or biology, but because I choose to be your father every single day. Nothing will ever change that. But what if Mom tries to take us away from you? She asked, tears starting to fall. Then I'll fight for you, I said firmly. I'll fight harder than I've ever fought for anything in my life. You and Mateo are the most important things in my world. Even though we're not really yours, she whispered. Especially because you're mine in the ways that matter most, I said, pulling her into a hug. Love makes a family, not DNA. That night, I called my lawyer to discuss how the paternity revelation might affect my custody case. The news wasn't good, but I didn't care. I was prepared to spend every penny I had to keep my children in my life. 6 months after the divorce, I thought the worst was behind us. I was wrong. Millicent had been quietly working behind the scenes, and her influence in our small Ohio town was about to become my biggest nightmare. It started when 3 of my biggest commercial clients suddenly canceled their contracts within the same week. Henderson Construction, Maple Grove Apartments, and Trinity Office Complex, jobs that represented 40% of my annual income, all gone without explanation. I'm sorry, Dalton, Jim Henderson said when I confronted him. The decision came from higher up. Something about going with a more established company. More established company. I'd been doing Henderson's flooring work for 5 years without a single complaint. Then my business insurance was mysteriously canceled due to what they called irregularities in my file. When I tried to get coverage elsewhere, I was quoted rates 3 times higher than what I'd been paying. It didn't take long to connect the dots. Millicent Harwick sat on the boards of half the businesses in town, and her late husband had been a major real estate developer. She had the connections to destroy me, and she was using them. But she made one crucial mistake. She underestimated how far a father would go to protect his children. I started documenting everything. Every canceled contract, every suspicious phone call, every instance where doors that had always been open suddenly slammed shut. I hired a private investigator to look into Millicent's business dealings, and what we found was explosive. Tax evasion, zoning violations, and payoffs to city officials going back years. Millicent Harwick wasn't just a respected community leader. She was a criminal who'd been hiding behind her dead husband's reputation. The night before my final custody hearing, I sat Amelia and Mateo down for the most important conversation of their lives. Kids, tomorrow a judge is going to decide where you live and how often you get to see me, I said. I want you to know that no matter what happens, I will never stop being your father. Are we going to lose you, Dad? Amelia asked, tears in her eyes. Not if I have anything to say about it, I replied. But I need you both to be brave tomorrow. Can you do that for me? They both nodded, and I pulled them close. Whatever happened in that courtroom, I'd given everything I had to this fight. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse with a briefcase full of evidence and a determination that surprised even my lawyer. Millicent and Rebecca were already there, looking confident and entitled. They had no idea what was coming. When my lawyer presented the evidence of Millicent's criminal activities and her campaign to destroy my business, the judge's expression changed from boredom to shock to anger. Mrs. Harwick, Judge Martinez said, "These are serious allegations. Are you prepared to respond to charges of witness intimidation and judicial interference?" Millicent's face went white. She'd overplayed her hand, and now she was facing federal charges. But my real victory came when Amelia took the witness stand and told the judge exactly what she thought about living arrangements. "I want to live with my dad half the time," she said clearly. "He's the one who helps with homework and makes sure we eat vegetables and reads us stories. Mom just lets Grandma Millie make all the decisions." 1 year after the divorce was finalized, I was standing in the backyard of our new house, a modest 3-bedroom that I'd bought after my business recovered from Millicent sabotage. Amelia and Mateo were helping me build a new tree house, and for the first time in years, I felt genuinely happy. The custody battle had ended with joint custody, exactly what I'd wanted from the beginning. Millicent was facing federal charges and had lost most of her influence in town. Rebecca had been forced to find a job when her mother's financial support disappeared, and the reality of single parenthood had humbled her considerably. "Dad, can we put a rope swing on this tree too?" Mateo asked, pointing to the old oak that dominated our backyard. "I don't see why not," I said, ruffling his hair. At 9 years old, he still called me Dad with the same enthusiasm he always had. The paternity issue had been resolved when I formally adopted him after Rebecca agreed it was in his best interest. "Dalton, you've got visitors," came a familiar voice from the back door. Willa, the motel receptionist who'd become much more than that over the past year, stepped onto the deck with 2 cups of coffee. She'd moved in 3 months ago, and the kids adored her. More importantly, she understood that Amelia and Mateo would always come first in my life. "Uncle Quentin's here," she said with a slight smile. My relationship with my brother had been one of the casualties of the divorce, but we'd been slowly rebuilding it through family counseling. He'd finally admitted that his feelings for Rebecca had clouded his judgment, and he'd made the difficult decision to move to another state to avoid further complications. "Send him out," I said. "The kids haven't seen him in months." Quentin appeared a few minutes later, looking healthier than I'd seen him in years. His new job in Colorado had been good for him, and the distance had given us both perspective. "Hey, Dal," he said, genuine warmth in his voice. "Hey, kids. That treehouse is looking pretty impressive. Uncle Quentin." Amelia squealed, running to hug him. As I watched my brother interact with my children, I realized that forgiveness wasn't just about them. It was about me too. Holding on to anger and resentment only hurt the people I loved most. "So," Quentin said later, while the kids showed Willa their progress on the treehouse, "you look happy, brother." "I am," I said, and meant it. It took losing everything to figure out what really mattered. "Any regrets?" he asked. I looked at Amelia, carefully measuring boards for the treehouse platform, at Mateo explaining his design ideas to Willa with animated gestures, at the modest but comfortable home I'd built for my family. "Just one," I said. "I regret that it took me so long to realize that some endings really aren't failures. Sometimes they're just the beginning of something honest." That evening, after Quentin had left and the kids were asleep, Willa and I sat on the front porch watching the stars. "You know what I realized today?" I said. "What's that?" she asked, taking my hand. "That motel receptionist who told me about honest beginnings. She was right. This is better than anything I had before." Willa smiled. Sometimes the best foundations are built on the rubble of what came before. And as I looked at the house where my children felt safe and loved, I couldn't have agreed more.